are you?
Doing well, thank you.
See, Mark Clasby and Bobby Todd.
Yep. Hey, Steve. Good morning.
Hi, Mark Clasby. Hi, Bobby Todd. Hi, Jennifer.
Good morning.
Hey, Crystal.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Linda.
Morning.
Morning.
Hey, Jenny.
Morning.
Morning.
Linda Reiner. Haven't seen you in a while.
I know, how you been?
Been good, hanging in there.
Great.
Hey, Jenny, what's that shirt you're wearing?
This would be the North Carolina Southeast Region Awesome Shirt.
Thank you.
Representing the region. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Looking good, Jen.
Nice to see everybody. Hey, Bo.
Hey.
Oh, another one representing.
Jenny, are you staying safe?
Absolutely, whoever just asked.
That was Robin.
Hey, Robin.
Morning, Alyssa.
Morning.
Working on it.
Alyssa.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. My name is Emily Martin. It is 8:31, so I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. Like I said, welcome to the 2020. We're glad to have you. My name is Emily Martin. I'm NCEDA's program manager, and we're excited to have you with us. Before getting started, I'd like to review the logistics of this meeting platform. First, all participants will stay muted during the meeting. We will unmute once the meeting adjourns for more virtual networking. For optimal viewing, in the top right corner of your screen, you will want to switch to speaker view rather than gallery view. We will have 3 guest speakers with us today following the NCEDA business session. Any questions for the speakers can be entered into the chat box, and the speakers can address those questions at the end of their remarks. If we run out of time and are not able to answer all questions that are posed, we will get answers and send them out as a follow-up. Please remember to stay muted during the session. At this time, I'd like to introduce NCEDA Board President, Dr. Patricia Mitchell, who will offer welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Emily, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first ever NCEDA virtual membership meeting sponsored by C.T. Wilson Construction and coming to you via Zoom. I'm Pat Mitchell. It's been my honor for the past 11 and a half months to serve as the NCEDA president. We have a number of important items on our agenda along with several guests that we will hear from today. The past year, and especially the past 3 months, has presented a stark reminder that economic developers have to be ready for anything. At any given moment, unforeseen events can disrupt our plans and our programs. As an organization, NCEDA is a reflection of the world that our members live in. And COVID-19 has presented new realities and new challenges for everyone. We're getting through these challenging times, and one of the greatest assets we have right now is our generous sponsors who have been very instrumental in our continued programming. I'd like to thank C.T. Wilson Construction, presenting sponsor, for today's virtual meeting. Their assistance goes a long way, and my thanks go out to them. And there's also a long list of supporters who are helping NCEDA weather these difficult times, our annual sponsors. And I would like to take a moment to recognize all of them. Our Longleaf Pine sponsors, Alliance Consulting Engineers, and Electricities of North Carolina. Our Dogwood sponsor, Stewart. And our patron sponsors, Big Boom Design, Brand Acceleration, DMJ, Dominion Energy, Duke Energy, Energy United, Greenfield, Monroe Union County Economic Development, Nexum Pruitt, Norfolk Southern, North Carolina Biotechnology Center, North Carolina Community College System, North Carolina Electric Cooperatives, North Carolina Railroad Company, North Carolina Southeast, Samet Corporation, and Smith Anderson. We'd also like to thank our media partner, WRAL TechWire, and also thank the North Carolina Department of Commerce and EDPNC for their continued partnership with us. Very important partnerships. I know NCEDA members join me in thanking these generous organizations and companies for the important role they play in our mission, and they play that role 365 days a year. Despite COVID-19, our organization continues to move forward. Most of our members have hopefully had a chance to participate in one of our 8 excellent webinars that NCEDA has produced in recent weeks. They've been informative and relevant. They've addressed policy as well as the practitioner side of economic development. Our board of directors, executive committee, and program committees have continued to meet virtually and by phone to keep NCEDA moving forward toward our important mission of serving as the voice of the North Carolina economic development community, providing professional development, networking, and advocacy. The most obvious impact of the pandemic on our organization has been the cancellation of our spring conference and the rescheduling of our annual conference, which is now scheduled to be held in person in Wrightsville Beach, August 25th through the 27th, and you'll hear more about these plans later. We also had to cancel our annual legislative day last month. Our legislative committee has worked hard to finalize priorities for the General Assembly, and COVID-19 has dramatically altered those plans as well. But urgent policy action needed by state and federal elected officials makes our legislative engagement more important than it's ever been. Here to tell you about NCEDA's continued advocacy for workforce innovation, digital infrastructure, performance-based incentives, and other priorities is Chris Platté, who co-chairs our legislative committee along with Joanna Helms. My thanks and the executive committee's thanks go out to the entire legislative committee, which at this time includes 58 members, for the time and the energy that they put into serving on that important committee. We appreciate the ideas and the commitment that come from you. At this time, I'll turn our podium over to Chris Platté, who in his real world is the Executive Director of Monroe County Economic Development. Yes, one of our patron sponsors, as you saw earlier. We appreciate Chris's leadership and support on every level, and I'll recognize him now for his legislative report. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. The Legislative Committee worked very hard to establish its list of priorities over 2020 in this short session. And so that list of priorities was approved by the board in March. And knowing that it was a short session, we decided to seek a fairly conservative list of priorities and hopefully laying the groundwork for a more ambitious agenda in next year's long session. Our priorities continue to fall within the 3 buckets: enhancing workforce development, improving infrastructure and product development, and sharpening North Carolina's competitiveness. As you know, COVID-19 arrived and dramatically altered the economic and political landscape, but the goals that made sense prior to the pandemic also make sense going forward. The new industries, businesses, and job growth opportunities will emerge in the post-pandemic economy, and North Carolina's workforce needs to be ready. NCEDA is encouraging legislators to support and fully fund customized training and workforce programs, and we maintain steadfast in our goal of expanding the state's apprenticeship programs. NCEDA is fully committed to supporting our partners at the NC Community College system by maximizing the North Carolina's human capital through accessible, responsive training and lifelong learning. As for infrastructure, COVID-19 may actually be the opportunity to finally make real strides in rural broadband. The CARES Act will bring more federal resources to the table for things like distance learning, telemedicine, e-government, and telework. We want North Carolina to make the most of the federal support and the new digital infrastructure. We continue to support the GREAT program and urging legislators to give fair consideration to the NC Fiber Act. We're watching the development of House Bill 1228, which creates a satellite-based broadband grant program and the appropriation of $2.5 million to that. And as supply chains shift to accommodate the new wave of reshoring, North Carolina needs to be in a competitive position. NCEDA continues to encourage legislators to support counties and municipalities as they try to create high-quality business and industrial properties with the help of tools like the Building Reuse Program, the Utility Account Fund, and other development measures. One long-standing tenet of the legislative priorities is the request for adequate financial support to both the North Carolina Department of Commerce and the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina to promote and market our state as a destination for business investment, job growth, film, and tourism. NCEDA remains diligent in asking legislators to continue their commitment to valuable programs like JDIG and other performance-based financial incentives. In addition to our advocacy in the General Assembly, we've also worked recently in these recent weeks to ramp up our outreach to the federal elected officials. Congress and the administration need to hear from the economic development community about how the pandemic is impacting us and how our work is vital in getting the economy back on its feet. We're working closely with our partners at IEDC to reach out to the North Carolina's delegation, and basically around two specific areas. One is to make the 501c6 nonprofits eligible to participate in the PPP. This includes many economic development and Chamber of Commerce organizations, and they're not currently eligible for the PPP loans, and they really need to be. And so we're making that case to Congress now. The second is stepping up to direct federal assistance to the economic development organizations by appropriating another $2 million to the US EDA's Economic Adjustment Assistance Program. And that will revise the language that will allow us to have qualifying organizations apply for funding to assist with the salaries and expenses. We believe both these measures would enable North Carolina's economic development organizations to operate at full capacity and lead our communities back through this economic recovery. Federal outreach is something NCEDA has never done before, but with the pandemic, we felt that we could no longer sit on the sidelines, did not have that luxury to not have our voice heard on a national level. And so we did that. And this year it's been very challenging, as you can imagine, as we've all had that going through the pandemic. And it has taken a lot of people to maintain that concerted legislative agenda. So I'd like to thank, first of all, my co-chair, Ms. Joanna Helms, the folks at Smith Anderson, which have been invaluable through this process, Lawrence Bivens and Emily Martin at NCEDA staff. Again, their effort has been incredible. And then finally, thank you to all the members of the Legislative Committee. They serve and provide great creativity and commitment to us. And so I'm so grateful to all of you. And again, look forward to the long session and how we can make some real strides going forward. NCEDA has another very busy committee driving our mission, and that is the Professional Development Committee. That important work is led by my colleague, Mr. Josh Hollingsey. Josh heads up the Transylvania Economic Development Alliance, and I would like to turn over my virtual podium to him now and hear about the NCEDA scholarships.
Morning.
Josh, you're good.
Okay, good morning, everyone. From Brevard. I'm sorry about that. NCEDA's Professional Development Committee has been busy, not just considering new needs surrounding the pandemic and its economic impact, but also adopting new delivery vehicles for that content, since we have not been able to gather face-to-face for what seems like years, but it's just a few months. We've produced a series of webinars delivered that have enabled us to offer insight, guidance, and knowledge to our members in a way that is convenient, concise, and timely. We have more webinars coming on a wide range of topic areas that you, our members, have told us that you'd like to see. Over the next 2 weeks, we have 3 webinars scheduled. The first will be held next Tuesday, June 16th, and will focus on tips and tools for a powerful economic development website, something that's become increasingly important. The next one will be held on Tuesday, June 23rd, and will focus on how to support your local businesses with Zoom Business. And then we'll also have a webinar on Thursday, June 25th, that will focus on course corrections for your strategic plan, something that we're all getting a crash course on. Registration is open for all these webinars, and more details can be found at www.ncda.org. We also have several other webinars in the works for July and August that will cover BR&E, PPE, manufacturing, reshoring, and a couple of marketing and communications related webinars that will concentrate on branding, social media, digital marketing, and PR crisis communications. So we have many more professional development and education opportunities for you this summer. For decades, a key element of NCEDA's professional development mission has been our scholarship program. In the past year, largely with inspiration from President Pat Mitchell, we have upgraded and updated our scholarship program to reflect the needs of today's economic development practitioners. These changes have captured the imagination of our members because we have a distinguished pool of winners that I'd like to introduce to you now. First, starting with Tony McNeil, Executive Director of the Spring Lake Economic Development Corporation, is this year's recipient of the Governor James E. Holshouser Professional Development Scholarship. The award supports coursework at either the Economic Development Institute or the IEDC. Congratulations to Tony. Our Jack Irvin Scholarship also funds participation at EDI or IEDC, and this year's winner of that award is Stephen Barrington, Executive Director of Sampson County Economic Development Commission. Congratulations, Stephen. And then the Dan Stewart Scholarship covers tuition for the basic economic development course at UNC Chapel Hill. This year's winner of that award is Ryan Schultz, who is Marketing Coordinator at the Carolinas Gateway Partnership in Rocky Mount. Our congratulations to Ryan. And in the past year, NCEDA has launched an important new professional development partnership with East Carolina University's Economic Development Academy on a certificate program that is a unique opportunity to sharpen skills and understanding that are unique to the practice of North Carolina economic developers. In support of that partnership, we've added an ECU Academy Scholarship. And the very first recipient of that award is Trey Goodson, who is the Regional Economic Developer at the North Carolina East Alliance in Greenville. Congratulations go out to Trey as well. NCEDA's Emerging Executives Program has something of a dotted line relationship with the Professional Development Committee due to its large number of overlapping opportunities. But the Emerging Execs have their own committee, another busy and important committee with its own set of co-chairs. I'd like to take a moment to thank Ryan Regan from the Asheville Economic Development Coalition, who has co-chaired NCEDA's Emerging Executives Committee over the last 2 years. He brought some real vision to the program, and we appreciate his service. For the 2020-2021 year, the Emerging Execs will be co-chaired by Kevin Lackey from Brunswick Business and Industry Development and Alyssa Bird of Chatham County Economic Development. We appreciate the willingness of Kevin and Alyssa to head up those efforts and looking at growing the number and importance of that particular NCEDA function. Now, at this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Mark Pope, my counterpart in Wayne County. He's immediate past president of NCEDA and is chair of this year's nominating committee. Go ahead, Mark.
All right, good morning, NCEDA. Good to see you, even though it's virtually. It is good to see all you folks again. It's a great time of year, and usually we have a great attendance in June, and from what I hear from Liz and our NCEDA staff, we got a great group on board today. So, you know, it's a favorite time of year for me, especially being from Eastern North Carolina. You get a chance to go to the Big Rock. And not knowing what was going to happen this year, I think there was 200 boats down there, and I had a chance to visit. Had a chance to come in with Michael Jordan yesterday beside his boat, and what an awesome sight that was. So it's good to see our economy turning and seeing folks out supporting our communities again, and that's a great feeling. As developers, we encourage and welcome the tourism that's out there. So anyway, from the past presidents and the nomination committee, we did hold our meeting. It was virtual this year, and what was great about that was we had 20 years represented our past presidents on the call. So a lot of good applications, a lot of good folks that we've looked at. And so we will move forward with some nominations to the board. Just a little way this will work, since it's a little bit different. We'll have a verbal vote this morning for slate of officers and incoming board members. When I call for a member vote, the NCEDA staff will unmute all participants, and everyone will respond with aye if in agreement of the slate, and we'll give opportunity to voice dissent as well. Once the verbal vote has concluded, the NCEDA staff will remute all participants. First of all, coming up to you for our executive board and our officer slate, the nomination committee presents to the board Randall Johnson as your president, John Nams as the vice president, Chris Platay as your new secretary treasurer, and of course, Dr. Pat Mitchell will be serving as the past president in that capacity. So as that slate of officers is presented to you, I would present to the board a motion, and all those in favor, I get an aye.
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 Thank you. Are any of those opposed? Like sign. With none opposed, I'll present to you our slate of officers moving forward for the 2021 year. Congratulations to all those folks. We look forward to a great year.
Hello.
Hey, Mark, I'd accidentally muted you again, so if you could unmute yourself, and I wasn't able to unmute you. Sorry about that.
That's all right. A lot of people like to mute me, but anyway. Thank you for that vote from the membership with our officer slate. Now to move forward to our 2023 at-large board member slate. Again, the past presidents had a task before them, and so would like to present the nominations for the 2023 at-large board. Martin Johnson, Beaufort County Economic Development, Jason McLeod from ECS Southeast, and Ryan Nance from the Director of Economic Development with the North Carolina Electric Cooperatives. So that is your board nominations for those at-large slates that are out there. So I will put before the board a motion, and all those in favor, please say aye. Say aye.
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 Mark?
Thank you. It sounded like almost, are there any opposed nominations? Not hearing any, we will accept those nominations as your at-large board for 2023. Also, before I step aside, I'd like to recognize our outgoing members of the board. Ben Teague for 3 years on the board. We appreciate all that you've done, Ben. We appreciate your service. And also Gary Lanier. Gary's been out there for several years, I think about 6 on our board. So we appreciate your service, Gary, and looking forward to some more things to come from you. As we move forward, hopefully at our annual conference coming up in August, we hope to have a more formal recognition of our folks at that meeting. So we appreciate it. You know, last time probably me being before you guys, I want to take a moment thanking the NCEDA staff.
Today's going to be pretty easy. I'm going to simply do with Stephanie and Roxanne around a
Thank you for the opportunity to serve this membership. It's a pleasure to see where it has grown and where it has come over the last couple of years. Look forward for a lot of great things and the importance that this organization has before it. There's a lot of new norms out there. I really feel like this organization's voice will be more needed as we move forward and more involvement of our members. So I just ask you as a past president to please step forward and support this organization and support your local communities. Be a voice in Raleigh and for our driven needs in our community. So with that said, I will turn it over to our new president, Mr. Randall Johnson.
Thank you, Mark. And thanks for leading the nominating committee this year, but more importantly, thanks for your excellent service and your leadership on the board over many years. We appreciate all the benefits you brought to the association through your service, and we'll miss you and your helpful guidance on the board, and we'll celebrate with you soon in person. I'd also like to emphasize how fortunate we are to have President Pat Mitchell leading our organization through these challenging times. I wish we were all together in Wrightsville Beach right now, celebrating with her, but when we're all able to get together in the same room again, we'll celebrate her leadership and her long-term exceptional service to NCEDA. Thank you, Pat. It's been a real pleasure serving under your leadership, and I look forward to working with you and this smart, hardworking board over the next year to continue building on our successes. As we chart our path forward, I think it's helpful to look back at some of the successes and gains we've seen over the past few years with the leadership of our long line of great presidents and board members, combined with the strong engagement of our NCEDA members. Most notably, we've seen significant enhancements to our programming and our networking opportunities. We've seen a dramatic growth in the impressive community of practitioners, partners, and allies who comprise our membership, increased attendance at events, and greater overall engagement of our fellow members. I think we owe a great deal of these improvements to our strong partnership with L2, Liz and Lawrence, who bring a high level of commitment, thoughtfulness, creativity, and professionalism to their roles with NCEDA. They've helped us launch the very successful inaugural Site Selection Summit a couple of years ago, which we will host again in October, as well as enhance our statewide outreach with the regional networking luncheons we initiated in 2018 in Rocky Mount. And as our in-person gatherings have been limited over the past few months, Liz, Lawrence, and Emily at L2 have also led our effort to help NCEDA pivot to a virtual model that's allowed us to continue to connect with each other online, to access professional development opportunities, and to hear from our state's elected leaders and economic development leaders on topics that are important to our community. We will continue to explore and enhance how our virtual offerings can benefit our members over the coming year. And further on the professional development front, we've added professional development sessions to each conference, established a book club, launched a mentor program, and worked with past President Charles Hayes and ECU to create the ECU Economic Development Academy and the North Carolina Certified Economic Developer Program. With the leadership of Crystal Morphus from Creative Economic Development, we created the NCEDA Research Committee to solidify NCEDA's position as the thought leader in economic development in North Carolina. And we've recently established the NCEDA Foundation to increase our capacity to serve and strengthen the broad statewide economic development community through funding additional scholarships, research, and education programs, especially to underserved, distressed, and rural counties and economic developers across North Carolina. And finally, we should all be impressed and gratified with how well the Emerging Executives Initiative has taken off, bringing a significant rise in the membership and engagement of younger economic developers who are our future in the association as well as in our state. We owe a debt of gratitude to Ryan Weatherington and Garrett Owens for their efforts early on to help us ramp up this initiative, and to the subsequent leaders, Laura Lee, Ryan Regan, Kevin Lackey, and now Alyssa Bird for growing the initiative. All these efforts help NCEDA enhance our impact across North Carolina. And with the more formalized legislative advocacy effort we initiated a few years ago and that we continue to pursue with our partners at Smith Anderson, we see NCEDA's voice in legislative matters growing, as NCEDA serves as the voice for the economic development community in North Carolina. So take a moment, pat yourselves on the back. We've accomplished a lot over the past few years. And with your continued commitment and engagement, NCEDA will continue to excel by strengthening and growing the programs I've mentioned. You and all our fellow members are the point of the spear in hitting the targets for North Carolina's economic recovery, resilience, and growth. And the upcoming annual conference in August will explore what the next 10 years will look like for economic development and how we can prepare ourselves to meet the challenges and capitalize on the opportunities we'll encounter. We are in a challenging time, but our organization is strong and well positioned to weather this storm, and we will remain strong together by continuing to build our momentum on the foundation of our successes. Now is the time to double down on the investments we've all made, not only to benefit our organization, but more importantly, to strengthen and grow our economic development community, activities, and successful outcomes across North Carolina. I thank the past presidents on the nominating committee for the opportunity to serve as your president. I'm honored to continue serving this Association of Economic Development Professionals who are so critical to North Carolina's current and future economic vitality. I love NCEDA, the mission and the people, and working with all of you, we will stay connected, persevere, and thrive together. Thank you. And now I'm pleased to welcome a well-known fellow NCEDA member to deliver remarks. The North Carolina Department of Commerce is the state's lead economic, workforce, and community development organization. And our first speaker has had a hand in just about every program in that department for most of his career in state government. And that's a career that now spans for nearly 4.5 decades. Recent months have no doubt been interesting ones at Commerce, and for its Chief of Staff, George Sherrill, NCEDA appreciates his many years of service to the state's economic development community in both good and difficult times. And it's now my honor to turn the Zoom floor over to George Sherrill, Commerce Chief of Staff. George?
Thank you, Randall, and congratulations on.
Thank you.
Was I muted?
Can you hear him?
Was I muted? Can you hear?
George, we can hear you now.
You were
Okay,
muted.
sorry about that. So anyway, Randall, I was congratulating you on election and thanking Dr. Pat Mitchell for her hard work the past year, a very difficult year with the COVID-19. But it really is a pleasure for me to be with you this morning. I do bring you greetings from Governor Roy Cooper and from Secretary of Commerce Tony Copeland. He would have liked to have been here, but the governor asked him to meet with a client today, right at 9 o'clock. So he said, George, could you step in for me? And as a longtime NCEDA member, it was a opportunity and a pleasure for me to be able to speak with you today. Because there's a lot going on at Department of Commerce, even this COVID-19 period, and I want to be able to tell you some things that we're doing. I tell you what, like you heard that I've been in state government for 4.5 decades. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that's interesting. But I've been around for hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, snowstorms, ice storms, and even an earthquake. But I can tell you, in those 4.5 decades, I have never seen anything or experienced anything like COVID-19, the pandemic. It's really impacted the state in a way that I've not seen any other natural disaster do. Aside from just the obvious public health emergency, COVID-19 has set off an historic crisis in North Carolina, and commerce has been at the center of it. It's difficult to know what to compare this to. Is it going to be like the Great Recession in 2008, 2009, or like the depression that my father experienced back in the 1930s? Let's hope not. Let's hope it's not going to be like that. I think, and Secretary Copeland thinks, it's probably more like an attack, kind of like a national security event like 9/11 or Pearl Harbor. And it was an attack that nobody could imagine, nobody could prepare for. And like those events, it's gonna, as we all have seen, because I can show you, here's my mask that I wear when I'm not speaking, it's gonna have a lasting impact on how we live and work and how we do business. So even though it's had this impact, and with most of our staff working at home, there's just a handful of us here in Raleigh at the headquarters, the commerce mission is continuing. We're fulfilling all our obligations. And so since early part of March, when this hit us, we've worked hard, and we're part of the solution. We think this will be temporary, dislocation, and we're planning strategically for opportunities that will emerge as the recovery gets underway and North Carolina economy reignites, and it will reignite. We'll be ready. And so doing all this, from folks working at home, we've learned a lot about telework. I really wasn't familiar with how telework would happen and how it would go, but it's gone very well. However, you've heard about the impact of the pandemic on our unemployment insurance system. And many of you that have been around for a while, you remember that it was called the Employment Security Commission in the old days, but in 2010, the North Carolina General Assembly transferred the Employment Security Commission to the Department of Commerce. And so we manage the Division of Employment Security, which is part of us, manages the unemployment program in North Carolina, and it's been ground zero for the economic side of this crisis. Before March the 15th, DES received about 3,000 claims a week. On April the 24th, when it was the first day that gig workers could be eligible for unemployment insurance, we received 54,000 claims that one day. On one day, 54. We were receiving for the past 36 months or so, 3,000 a week. So we received 54,000 on one day, and we've had over 1 million North Carolinians file an unemployment claim. Now, with a workforce we project of about 4.9 million people, 1 million people filing an unemployment claim, that's pretty dramatic. So our folks at the Employment Security Division have been inundated with calls and online claims information. So what have we done? You've read a lot about the department, and people indicate that we've been slow. But when we had a call center situation, we had 2 calls, and we have 2 call centers that are manned by state employees. With 70 people, March the 1st, we had 70 people in those 2 call centers answering calls for those 3,000 claims a week. Today, we have over 2,000 people in those call centers answering people's calls and processing their claims. Now, fortunately for us, we updated our computer system a couple years ago, and 99% of the claims that are filed online, and less than 1% are filed over the phone. But there's a lot of people that call in and ask about the status of their claim. So we've done a lot of technology updates. People can now go online and find out the status of their claim. You can even call and find out it. We've implemented a chat function, a chat bot, which I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know what a chat bot did exactly. I do now. Know more about it than I ever wanted to know. And so we've paid since March 15th over $3.7 billion, $3.7 billion in unemployment funds to those people who have filed a claim. Now, that's had a significant impact on the environment, but on the economy. But we want to hopefully in the next several months have a lot of those people get back to work, and so that we can decrease that. Our trust fund balance, the state's money, the trust fund balance is strong. A majority of this funding, the $3.7 billion, is coming from the federal government. The federal government has 3 programs that we had to also incorporate into our computer system, which we did successfully. So we are not going to run out of state trust fund unemployment funds. So what else are we doing? Our Division of Workforce Solutions has been focused on putting people back to work. And hopefully you saw in last week's news that that division received $6 million from the Federal CARES Act, funds for dislocated workers through the U.S. Department of Labor. And this will drive short-term reskilling, on-the-job training, and transitional support that will move unemployed people either temporarily or permanently into other career areas. One of those areas that we hope they'll move into, and we're pushing for that, is contact tracers. Another type of work that I had no idea was a type of work until the last couple of months, contact tracers. We're going to fund contact tracers through these monies. So the NC Works Center has locations across the state, 87 locations where the public can go and get assistance on finding what employment opportunities are available. We're starting to open those back up, but they all have been available through a virtual meeting. And they recently implemented a chat function. So if someone wants to go online and get an appointment or chat, they're able to do that. So we continue to find ways to help people get back to work. And so we've partnered with the Industry Expansion Solutions at NC State to help manufacturers reorient their production lines into goods like personal protective equipment, which is in great demand now. So another area that we've been working hard in is our rural division. So what have they been doing during this pandemic? They've been busy getting feedback from community leaders across the state on a virtual basis, and our planners have met with them with all 100 counties. They've met with virtually with leaders to discuss their challenges and offer support. We developed that into a report that we'll use as we move forward. This feedback will help us design new ways to help local units of governments in their economic development efforts. We also have a new partnership that we've recently announced, our Main Street and Rural Planning Center at Commerce and the League of Municipalities, called Leverage NC. And this initiative will support strategic planning, organizational development, project development, and best practices for rural communities as they adjust to the new normal. And our community development team has been notified from the federal government, from HUD, that through the CARES Act, they're going to receive $28 million. And we're looking at sending out a notice to all local units of government about this opportunity soon, which will support initiatives in rural broadband, distance learning, telemedicine, and online government. And stand by for that. So some people probably think, well, the COVID-19 has really just stopped new development in the state. Well, that's not really true. despite the damage and uncertainty of the COVID-19 has brought to the economy, we've had an impressive run of job announcements recently with more actually to come in the next couple of weeks. So the pipeline is not empty by any means. So early this week, if you read the newspaper, you saw that Grifols Therapeutics in Clayton is going to create a new bioprocessing center and create 300 new jobs. And also on Tuesday of this week, we announced the arrival in Cabarrus County of Prime Beverage Group, a contract manufacturer that will be creating 231 new jobs. Last week, over in Durham, Grail Inc. announced a new R&D operation that will employ 398 scientists, technologists, and clinicians. And this company is going to specialize in working with cancer detection blood screening. So last month, we also had a really nice announcement announcing up in Rockingham County, Ontex Global, personal care products manufacturer from Belgium, will create 400 new jobs. And in Burke County, Unix Packaging, a California contract beverage maker, will build its first East Coast site, creating 226 jobs. And then in April, we had an announcement here in Wake County that Bandwidth, a communication software company, announced that it will be creating over 1,100 new jobs. So there's going to be some more coming out. We've got some significant projects that we're working on. Like I said, the governor and the secretary are meeting with a client today. So we are moving forward in that area. And so let me give you a perspective this year to last year. So this year we've announced 45 projects that we had in an economic, the NC Department of Commerce has had a hand in, compared to 44 at this time last year. So more jobs, one more company has been announced than last year. The number of jobs is down though. It's 5,326 jobs this year compared to 6,051 this time last year. However, one thing that's significant with some of these pharmaceutical companies, which they spend a lot of money and do a lot of investment, we've had $1.6 billion in capital investment this year compared to $633 million the same time last year. So, like I said, it's not all bad news. We're continuing to work. The pipeline's full. We're going to need your help. So, in conclusion, I want to say all the assets and advantages North Carolina has enjoyed before the pandemic are still here and will remain here after the pandemic. Strategic access to global markets, modern infrastructure, ready-to-go sites, and our outstanding workforce. Companies from around the world also clearly like the leadership they find in North Carolina. That includes quality people and professionals working at all levels of the economic development process. And that means you. And Commerce looks forward to working with you and our partners to embrace what we expect will be some very exciting opportunities that I think we'll see on the road to recovery. So I want to thank you for allowing me to speak today with you. It's been a pleasure. I was so happy to not hear anybody say anything about unemployment to me in advance. And so it's been a real pleasure to be here. And also next, I get the opportunity to introduce our next speaker. And as a state, one of our most important priorities is rebuilding our travel and tourism industry, which has, quite frankly, is borne the brunt of the recession. Your next speaker has a lot to say about this industry, which employs 13% of the state's workforce and generates over $23 billion in annual sales. Well, she happens to be a friend of mine and a former long-term colleague here at the Department of Commerce, Lynn Minges. She's now the president of the North Carolina Restaurant and Lodging Association, a post she's held since 2013. The NCRLA advances the interest of more than 20,000 North Carolina businesses. And like I said before, she was a former colleague. When Lynn was here, she served as the Assistant Secretary for Tourism, Film, and Sports Development. We're all here at the Department of Commerce proud of her long list of accomplishments and confident in her ability to lead North Carolina's tourism industry into a promising new post-pandemic era. So now I'm pleased to turn the podium over to my friend, Lynn Minches. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here with you today and talk with you a little bit about some of the things that we've got going on at, excuse me, let me get my screen share going here. I'm learning all kinds of new tools. Just a moment. Let's see. There we go. All right. Learning all kinds of new tools, and I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about some of the work we've been doing at the North Carolina Restaurant and Lodging Association. As you all know, we have, as George said, kind of really borne the brunt of this COVID-19 crisis when restaurants, about 20,000 of those across North Carolina, were abruptly closed on March 17th. As you might suspect, we had been involved very closely working with the governor's office for about a week prior to this March 27th, so that we had a hand in the way that restaurants were closed down. And so I'll tell you a little bit about that later. About a week later, on March 27th, the governor issued the statewide shelter in place, and it was really at that point in time that we saw hotels begin to furlough workers. All in all, over the course of those 10 days, about 300 to 350,000 North Carolinians were unemployed from our industry. And George, you and the team at the Department of Commerce heard from them as they began to apply for unemployment benefits. We stepped up as an association and pivoted really on two fronts. So first of all was to create a workers' relief fund to provide some support immediately to the workers in our industry who are being displaced. There was a bit of a lag in the time that they lost their jobs and didn't have money to buy groceries for their families and pay rent and those kinds of things. And so we set up a grant fund, $1.2 million, and awarded grants in the amount of $500 per individual displaced. Obviously, we couldn't meet all the need, but we had an application process so we could serve those that were in the most pressing needs. We also pivoted to provide resources to our industry and created a new website portal to provide quick access to information just relative to restaurants and hotels. So we did the Workers Relief Fund. We began to advocate for the industry at all levels of government. We were very obviously involved in federal advocacy as we work in partnership with the National Restaurant Association, the American Hotel and Lodging Association. We worked with Governor Cooper, we worked with the legislature, and we've worked with mayors and county commissioners all over the state, really now for what appears to be about 14 weeks, I think, who's counting. We have fielded thousands and thousands of questions from restaurateurs and hoteliers. We guesstimate that we probably fielded and responded to about 50,000 inquiries over the course of the last few weeks. We provided information through newsletters, e-blasts. The media has been all over, the impact, what's happening, what are restaurants of the future going to look like. And we've garnered over 2 billion media impressions, 2 billion media impressions. So lots and lots of interest from the media on the impacts on our industry. We've worked to kind of quantify the impact through industry surveys to try to tell the story about the impact that this is having, the number of people that have been hired back, the number of restaurants that remain closed. And then we're working hard to spearhead our recovery and what we hope will be a revival of our industry. So when Governor Cooper first closed restaurants in response to the pandemic, we worked very closely with him and his team to identify restaurants as essential services. That becomes very important about how that closure was managed. And so we were identified as essential services. Hotels were also identified as essential services. And in the state of North Carolina, they were never closed or restricted in any way. And that was very, very important as those hotels began to pivot to, house relief workers and those that needed to separate from their families because they had been exposed to COVID-19, et cetera. And so in North Carolina, they were never restricted. You have seen some restrictions in New Hanover County, Buncombe County, a few other leisure destinations, but those are done at the county level and are fairly isolated. Governor Cooper stepped up and declared a state of emergency statewide very early on, as you all know, and that gave us access to important SBA loans and other resources. Governor Cooper, through executive order, made the changes to the unemployment insurance benefits that made our employees eligible on day one for unemployment, which was also very important as we were separating, hundreds of thousands of workers all on the same day. And then we were able to get some tax delays and relief for our businesses who were cash strapped and needed to retain cash in their accounts for as long as possible. So we were able to get some delays there. Then on the second executive order, March 27th, that's when we saw hotel layoffs began. And we began to deal with a whole new set of issues around eviction from hotels as people were displaced from congregate living situations and moved into hotels and weren't paying bills. And so we worked with the AG's office and others to, try to find resources to pay for those hotel rooms, to obviously offer housing for those displaced from congregate shelters living situations, but also make sure that the hotel owners didn't bear the brunt of the cost of housing those folks. We then had an opportunity. Now remember, most of the first part of the closures were done, and really our only relief was the executive order and Governor Cooper and the administration, because the legislature, as you remember, didn't come back into session until April 28th. And so from March 17th to April 28th, when we were in crisis, the only relief we had was through the administrative route. But we did have an opportunity to speak remotely through Zoom call, much like this, with the General Assembly and address their Economic Recovery Committee work group to talk about the industry and to make an appeal for some relief. And then when the legislature did finally come back into session on April 28th, we were able to, something we had advocated for, to get a $125 million small business loan program that you all know runs through the Golden Leaf Foundation and the Rural Center. This was something we had advocated for, provided immediate relief to small businesses, and many of those who have received relief have been small restaurants and lodging facilities. We were pleased to work with the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina to receive tourism grant funding in the amount of, or promotional funding in the amount of $5 million of extra money. Those dollars have not been spent yet. We're sort of waiting for the right timing for when we think consumers will be ready to travel again. But Whit Tuttle and the team at Visit NC are ramped up and ready to go with a very aggressive tourism recovery campaign that we think will be very helpful. We also work with the legislature to extend liability release provisions for essential workers, essential businesses. So I mentioned that Governor Cooper carved out and identified restaurants and hotels for as essential businesses. Then with this legislative action, those businesses were relieved from lawsuits over COVID-19 contraction by either employees or consumers. They further went on to put permanent in place the restrictions for unemployment filing, and also we worked with them on school calendar issues, something we normally have a pretty big concern about, but obviously during COVID-19 realized that we were going to have to waive some of that. We, on April 20th, sent a letter to Governor Cooper asking that he reopen restaurants and restaurants for business. We outlined a number of guidelines that we were committed to putting in place, and we also signed up to sign a North Carolina restaurant promise that essentially said that we would enter into a mutual relationship of, ensuring that restaurants provided the highest level of public health and safety during COVID-19, but that we also expected the patrons who came into our establishments to do the same. And so we outlined this letter for him and continued conversations. And from that, we worked with the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services to create a new program, Count on Me NC. The program is really about mutual responsibility. It's about businesses, mostly restaurants, but also hotels and other hospitality, customer-facing businesses, about the commitment to training and preparing for operating in the COVID-19 era, something that seems very unfamiliar to business owners and to those of us who patron these businesses. There is a guest component that says that we can do everything we want to do to make sure that you are safe when you come into our establishments, but that you as guests also have a responsibility, and it outlines what those are. And so we created a website and then training modules, these 5 training modules that we did in partnership with the North Carolina State University's Cooperative Extension Program. We encourage you all to encourage businesses in your communities to take this training because it's essential to helping them know how to operate during COVID-19. Restaurant managers are already required in every single restaurant and food service establishment across the state to already take food service and sanitation courses. But this adds an additional layer about how to operate during COVID-19. So there's a 30-minute online visual component that allows restaurant owners and operators to be trained on how to operate. There's a module for front of the house employees, a module for back of the house employees. There is a module for just general business cleaning and sanitation procedures, everything from how to clean the ink pen that people sign when they cash out their checks, to surfaces of not only the table, but the backs of chairs, etc. And then there's a general business best practice for management. So any of these are open for any business in North Carolina to take the training. When they do, they print out a certificate that they can display. They also have access to a toolkit that gives them logos that they can use, door clingers for their restaurant and other establishment windows. They can use the Count on Me logo then on their any of their promotional materials, social media, websites, menus. And then their businesses become identified on the website that looks like this. So if someone wants to search for restaurants in their community or other establishments that are certified with the Count on Me NC pledge, they can do so. Then on May 22nd, as a part of this initiative, Governor Cooper invited me to participate in the reopening of restaurants. I was honored to do that and talk a little bit publicly about the Count on Me NC pledge. To date, over 10,000 individuals have taken courses. The courses completed are 37,000 courses. So many individuals, particularly restaurant owners, will take multiple courses so that they can in turn train their staff. We have 5,000 unique businesses that have participated. The media has covered this extensively, and we're receiving nationwide coverage for this because there is no other state in the nation that's doing anything of this nature. And so we're getting, national publicity around this program. We've done over 50 webinars on the program, and the program will be supported by Visit NC with the $5 million in promotion. So when those ads begin running, it will be about, getting back and traveling, but the message will be to look for the logo in businesses that carry the Count on Me NC logo to ensure that those establishments are embracing the very highest level of standards possible. So again, that restaurants finally opened at 50% capacity. We were able to go back in through executive order and extend essential services, not only for takeout and delivery, as was in the original mandate, but we also were able to get that extended for in-dining services. We were able to, the governor gave regulatory authority to the ABC Commission to allow them to waive certain ABC regulations that are normally in place. And that allowed us to be able to extend restaurant service into streets and sidewalks and public areas with local approval. So you see that happening around North Carolina today. That is allowing restaurants to, hopefully recoup a little additional revenue and seating capacity in exterior places, something we lobbied for, and again, was a part of this executive order. That breweries and distilleries were not at first included in that, but then we got that clarified the next day. Private bars remain closed. You see that in the news. A big challenge continuing to go forward is hotel meeting space that remains closed around North Carolina. Interior space in hotels can only be meetings of 10 people. And so that is obviously, a big concern. Our group has a meeting with the governor and senior leaders and public health officials on Monday to continue discussion about how we can thoughtfully reopen hotel meeting space and wedding venues, et cetera. So we continue that discussion. We've proposed some guidance about what that may look like and sent that to the governor a couple of weeks ago. And then we continue to work for additional relief at the legislative level. Anything we can possibly do to try to save restaurants across North Carolina. They are struggling and will continue to struggle, particularly at 50% capacity. So just stay tuned, and we appreciate all that you all are doing to support restaurants and hotels. We've begun the journey back, but it is going to be a long, long road to recovery. So, much more to do. And with that, I will stop and see if anybody has questions.
Any questions for Lynn? Don't be bashful. All right. Thank you to George and Lynn for those helpful overviews. I had the privilege to work with both of you at the Department of Commerce, and it was great to see and hear from you this morning. Lynn, we know that for some North Carolina communities, tourism is the most viable, and perhaps even the only viable economic development strategy, and the large role that restaurants and hotels play for our state's tourism. We know that North Carolina's restaurant and lodging industry may be hurting now, but we also know that under your leadership, it is in the best possible hands. I'm John Nelms from Duke Energy, and as of a few minutes ago, I'm Vice President-elect at NCEDA. I have the great pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Chris Chung. Since early 2015, Chris has been President and CEO of the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, overseeing the economic development marketing, sales, film and tourism promotion, export development, and other important functions on behalf of the state. Chris is a close partner and friend of NCEDA, and we're grateful for his support of our mission in addition to leading our colleagues at EDPNC. Please welcome Chris Chung.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see a lot of friendly, familiar faces. Since this is normally the time of year when we would be at the beach, I thought it would probably be appropriate to go ahead and put one of these virtual backgrounds. I do that for two reasons. One, hopefully that brings a little bit of the traditional conference experience a little closer in this virtual age that we're living in, but also because we are all participating in so many different Zoom calls these days, and as Lynn said, regrowing our tourism economy, helping it rebound is absolutely vital for economic development. We can all do our part as ambassadors for the great things to do and see in North Carolina. So I just sent a link out through the chat function. All of you who are doing Zoom calls, you can download a suite of virtual backgrounds provided by the Visit NC tourism team at EDPNC, everything from the coast to the mountains to everything in between. So again, each of you have your role to do in touting the great things in North Carolina, and hopefully that's going to accelerate that tourism recovery that we know is also important for the economy here in the state. But it's really nice to be with you all today. Liz has reminded me we're trying to keep it on a tight schedule, so I'll get through my 10 minutes as quickly and as efficiently as possible. I'm going to pull up a presentation here really quickly, and hopefully you all should be able to see that on your screen now. So let's see here. There you go. All right, so really the things I want to get through today, a quick update on some of the new faces or changes rather in terms of personnel at EDPNC. These are some of the folks that you work with every day. Talk a little bit about the project pipeline. You heard George mention some of the announcements that have been made here in the last few weeks and more to come, which is great. I'll also help you guys understand what that actual pipeline looks like right now as we're seeing it from project activity. And then just a real quick dash through the different functions of the EDPNC in terms of what life looked like before March and what life has looked like since March in areas like business recruitment, like tourism, like existing industry, and perhaps where we're headed from here in this new normal that we're all trying to navigate. First off, in terms of personnel changes on the business recruitment front, since I know many of you do work with the business recruitment team, as you all hopefully saw, we promoted Melissa Smith, a senior manager of business recruitment. She'll be taking over the role of vice president of business recruitment. That's the role that David Spratley previously held before he returned to Commerce at the end of 2019. Melissa will start in that role on July 1st. Also being promoted is Garrett Wyckoff. Garrett is also, like Melissa, a senior manager today. He'll be promoted to a new position titled the Director of Business Recruitment, reporting to Melissa as VP. So Melissa will oversee our business recruitment and business development functions, which are of course involved in going out there and generating more deal flow, but competing successfully for the deals that we do have a chance to compete for. So it's a great promotion for two folks who have been part of the EDPNC team since day one, but of course have a number of years at Commerce prior to EDPNC's formation. So hope if you haven't already, you'll reach out and congratulate both of them on a well-deserved promotion. Many of you also hopefully saw the news about Laura Johnson-Lee, our food industry business recruiter who has been tapped by Mark Owen at Greater Winston-Salem, Inc. Laura is going to be the new Senior Vice President of Economic Development at this new entity combining the Winston-Salem Chamber and Winston-Salem Business, Inc. Tremendous opportunity for Laura. I can't say enough about the great work she's done for us in the 3.5 years she's been at EDPNC. She's going to be a great addition to the Winston-Salem group, but she'll be moving on at the end of this month. Long story short, that's going to give us with 2, perhaps 3 business recruitment roles that we'll be looking to backfill here in the coming months. So if any of you are aware of individuals who bring a strong statewide business recruitment experience profile, That, of course, would be great. Even better if we can hire them away from some of the states that we compete with on a routine basis. Let's get some good folks in here who know how other states operate. And if in the meanwhile, we can take away some of the best people that our competitors have on their teams, hey, that's killing two birds with one stone. But we will be going out and posting these here in the very near future. In terms of project pipeline, I'm going to switch screens here really quickly and give you guys a little bit of an inside look at our Salesforce dashboard. Just bear with me 1 second here. Let's see here. Oops, sorry. Okay. Very good. So you all should hopefully be seeing the Salesforce dashboard here up on screen. This gives you a look at what that active project pipeline looks like today. So as you can see, we're sitting right now on about 170 active recruitment and expansion projects, everything from very small organic expansions of existing facilities all the way up to the largest business recruitment pursuits that we're working with the Department of Commerce on at the state level. That represents about 38,000 potential new jobs, $9.5 billion in potential new investment. One item that would be good for you all to notice, though, is what is activity actually looking like right now? And again, hopefully you're able to see this in terms of the screen share. We track new projects coming in the door every month as an indicator of how busy things are in terms of new deal flow. You can see since COVID-19 hit in March, we've been tracking at 18 deals coming in the door. In March, 15 in April, 16 in May, and so far for the month of June, sitting at 9. For March, April, and May, those new deals coming in through the tracking at about 70 to 80% of where we were at the same point last year for those same months. So while we are still seeing projects coming in through the door, it is at a slower pace and deals are taking longer. Again, George talked about some of the announcements that were made in the past few weeks. That's great. That was certainly deals that were in the later stage of our pipeline. For the deals that are in the middle or the early parts, it is taking longer for them to get through that due diligence process. No surprise, when you can't travel as freely as you could in pre-COVID days, that's going to slow your ability to actually get on the ground and take a look at locations, sites, buildings, and whatnot. We are starting to see some of that activity come back, which is encouraging. Hopefully that frees up some of the logjam in the pipeline and some of those deals can move forward. However, we have had a lot of projects, roughly 40 by this point, that have either canceled their projects or postponed their investment plans because of uncertainty around COVID-19. So thought I'd share that really quickly just so folks have an understanding of what we've seen. Let me see here. Let me go back to sharing my presentation real quickly. So again, since this is all the time of year that normally we'd be together, I know the summer conference is often a time to bring family members and introduce them to the broader professional family that we're all part of. Since I don't get to do that this year, and many of you were kind enough to reach out to congratulate my wife and me on our first child back in November. This is a little Elizabeth, Lizzie as we call her. She's starting to eat solid foods, a little difficulty getting some of that in her mouth the other day, but if there's one silver lining to these past few months for me personally, it's the ability to see her far more than I would have under the normal travel and even office schedules that pre-pandemic life were characterized by. So again, in every challenging situation, you've got to look for the silver linings, and Elizabeth has definitely been the biggest silver lining. In terms of new normal, let me kind of wrap up with that really quickly here. I'll take you through each of the 5 different functions that EDPNC performs on behalf of commerce at the state level, and what were we seeing before March, and what do we expect to see after this. Certainly from an existing industry standpoint, that team has been busy with all those things you heard George talk about in terms of the state's economic response to COVID-19. Before March, we know that for our existing industry team, sitting down with companies and employers across the state, the #1 challenge was workforce. We need to find the skills. In some cases, we just need warm bodies, but workforce was the #1 issue. Also know a lot of the manufacturers that we talk to around the state, dependent, of course, on a very global supply chain. Fast forward to today, right now, for a lot of those existing employers, access to those financial resources is key, whether those are federal stimulus dollars, whether those are state recovery loan dollars. Those financial resources absolutely pivotal for some of these companies to be able to get through COVID-19. Right now, as many companies begin to reopen more broadly, guidance on how to reopen safely for their employees, for their partners, for their customers, that's also key. Knowing what testing resources are out there, being able to secure necessary quantities of PPE for their employees. These are all some of the things that our existing industry team is talking to and helping companies with around the state. Of course, soft downstream demand for a lot of our existing employers is going to be one of the biggest headwinds as we come out of COVID-19. It's going to take a while. Workforce readiness. We've all heard and seen the stories about how the combination of both federal and state unemployment insurance has actually made it harder for some employers to get their employees to come back to work when those employees are making, in some cases, actually quite a bit more than they were making on the job without the risk of going back to the workplace. And so hopefully that issue sorts itself out, but that is something that we're seeing in sectors everywhere from tourism to manufacturing. And of course, even though supply chains are global, everybody has seen how risky that is in the era of a pandemic. And so there's going to be some companies that question whether or not they need to have more of that supply chain concentrated around them. On tourism, you heard Lynn talk about it, but we were going from 3 consecutive years in a row of record visitor spending in North Carolina, peaking at $27 billion last year. Of course, right now, 2020, definitely going to be off that mark. We were also targeting a lot of international tourism audiences with our marketing efforts, the goal being that tourism visitors from overseas spend a lot more money, spend a lot more time here. And of course, our award-winning marketing campaign focused on new novel experiences. We branded it First That Last, really selling some of those unique experiences to travelers. Today, as Lynn mentioned, we've got an uncertainty recovery period for tourism, and that's really concerning because it is such a bedrock of North Carolina's economy. We're going to focus right now on in-state travelers and visitors coming from nearby states. Our research tells us that when people do begin to travel, they're going to want to keep it pretty close to home, definitely somewhere they can drive to as opposed to getting on a plane. And then, of course, our research also tells us that when consumers do begin to travel again, we're not going to be well served by touting to them new novel experiences. Travelers are really looking for safe, comfortable, familiar. And so our marketing message really has to reflect that. I'll skip ahead here lastly to what we expect to see on the business recruitment front. Again, 2019 was a high water mark for us in our brief 6-year history in terms of jobs announced. It was also a high water mark for the state of North Carolina in terms of jobs announced going back 15 years, pre and post EDPNC. 21,600 new jobs announced, about 160 recruitment and expansion wins last year. It was a great year. We headed into 2020 with a very full pipeline of active, serious projects. We also know that metro areas, highly populated urban areas, were very attractive to companies because they represented a larger pool of available workers. And even in those metro areas, concentrated urban, downtown, dense settings were really attractive to knowledge employers, professional services, tech companies, for all those kinds of amenities that they thought millennials and other desirable employees would want to have. Fast forward to today, our sales pipeline is down about 25% from pre-COVID, largely due to a lot of companies essentially canceling or indefinitely postponing their investment plans because they cannot read the tea leaves on what COVID-19 is going to do to their demand and their industry sectors. Again, we've seen new projects come in the door, but we've lost a lot that have left the pipeline because they just can't continue with those searches in this uncertainty. Deals are taking longer, and one thing that we're going to be really interested to see as time goes forward is, will companies de-emphasize the need to be in an urban or metro area? And certainly will they look to be further away from a dense downtown center, because those are the sorts of conditions that actually make a pandemic a little bit more challenging when you pack a lot of people into the same small physical space. And so that will be really curious as we begin to see more projects involving tech companies, office employers. Will they gravitate more towards suburban or even exurban locations in favor of the downtowns that have been so popular in recent years for site selection activity in those industries? We don't know, but time will tell. With that, like I said, This is maybe a good bit of levity to end things on. It is a challenging time, but like in any challenging situation, you need to look for the opportunities. This has probably been my favorite cartoon to illustrate exactly that. So hopefully you get a little bit of levity from this graphic as well. So always good to be with you all to share some insights and perspectives from the front lines at EDPNC. Look forward to continuing to partner with all of you, even in these very challenging times. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that update, Chris. And especially thank you for that precious picture. We'll look forward to meeting Emma or Elizabeth in person. I know others join me in feeling encouraged by the project pipeline and some of the other positive evidence that you're seeing about the future and what the future might hold. We appreciate your upbeat and very dynamic leadership at EDPNC, so thank you. I would like to briefly mention 2 segments of the work that was planned by this board, current board, at our annual retreat last summer as we began our new program year. Obviously, COVID and a virtual world interrupted many plans, but certainly not all of them. First, NCEDA places a strong emphasis on relationship building and on carrying the message that NCEDA is the go-to voice for economic development. One of the goals that the board determined last summer was an outreach to ally organizations for visibility. Throughout the year, members of the executive committee in Lawrence reached out and met with or participated in events with the following organizations: NC Growth at the Keenan Institute for Private Enterprise, My Future NC, the North Carolina Chamber, Dogwood Health Trust, North Carolina Press, North Carolina Association of Community College Presidents, UNC Economic Transformation Council, and the North Carolina Association of Independent Colleges and Universities. As a good developer friend once commented to me, you can never have too many friends. The executive committee and the management team have continued to build those relationships, and we believe these relationships strengthen our organization as well as demonstrating we are the go-to entity for economic development. A second goal established at last year's planning retreat was the formation, which Randall has already mentioned, of a 501c3 that could provide additional services to the economic development community. I want to personally thank Randall, our incoming president, for his leadership in that, and also thank the generous assistance from Ernie Pearson, who has helped with that foundation. Look to hear much more on this in the coming weeks as this new entity takes off and we witness new ways to demonstrate that we are that voice. We're coming to the end of this first ever virtual membership meeting. Before we close, I want to mention our plans for the Economic Developer of the Year and the Emerging Executive of the Year awards. Those are typically announced at our membership meeting during the summer conference. The board and the executive committee believe very strongly that these recognitions, if at all possible, should be awarded in the physical presence of colleagues. So instead of announcing now, we will award those awards, the Economic Developer of the Year and the Emerging Executive, at the fall conference in October. You will see a notice later this summer calling for nominations for those. Please take a look at that and nominate some colleagues for those awards. Finally, Liz tells me registration will open later today for the annual conference in Wrightsville Beach, August 25th through the 27th. Watch your email for information on that. And then personally, as the outgoing president, I would like to thank the board and staff of the organization for their support during the year. Despite events well outside anyone's control, NCEDA has experienced a successful year. And I appreciate all those who work so hard to make good things happen. And that is not only limited to the board and the staff. but to all of you in the audience who have hung in there with us as we've gone through a number of changes. There were 195 individuals registered for this virtual meeting, and I think that speaks to what our organization stands for. As my developer friend said, you can never have too many friends. I sincerely believe that the strength of NCEDA is that we are friends. So thank you for that. I'm excited to work with our new president, Randall Johnson, next year, and I will miss having regular contact with Mark Pope, who has been an incredible leader for this organization and has become a very good personal friend. We hope to see everyone soon, either virtually or in person, but in the meantime, stay healthy, stay confident, and stay connected. And thank you for being with us.